Madam, I'm very sorry, but no dog can finish me. What a mess.
You can't.
Let's take the doctor there.
I'm not taking him. He's taking me.
Are you hurt, madam?
Madam.
Oh, women and children first, boys.
Say, what is the score, anyway?
Oh, so it's you he was after.
Hello, sugar.
He's dragged me into every gin mill on the block.
Yeah, I had him out this morning.
Ah, I thought so.
Oh, this is Tommy, my wife.
How are you?
How do you do?
Tommy, I don't usually look like this. I've been Christmas shopping.
Madam, I'm afraid we shall take the dog out.
Oh, it's all right, Joe. It's all right. It's my dog. And, my wife.
Well, you might have mentioned me first on the billing.
The dog's well trained. He'll behave himself.
It might bite somebody.
No, he's all right. Look, lie down. Lie down. Stand up. Yeah?
Oh, any luck?
Yes, he's just round the corner.
Your father?
No, Macaulay. I'm just going to go and see him.
My wife. This is Dorothy Wynert.
How do you do? I'm sorry we have to rush.
See, we're stopping in the Normandy for a couple of weeks. Drop around, see us.
Well, we'd love to. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Sit down, sugar. Oh, Leo.
Yes.
First
Yes,
on the
sir.
first
2
on the-
cocktails.
Pretty girl.
Yes, she's a very nice type.
You got types?
Only you, darling. Lanky brunettes with wicked jaws. Leo. Compliments this evening.
Who is she?
Oh, darling, I was hoping I wouldn't have to answer that.
Come on.
Well, Dorothy is really my daughter. You see, it was spring in Venice, and I was so young I didn't know what I was doing. We're all like that on my father's side.
By the way, how is your father's side?
Oh, it's much better, thanks. And yours?
Say, how many drinks have you had?
This will make 6 martinis.
All right. Will you bring me 5 more martinis? Leo, line them right up here.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com and this is my good friend and co-host and new cat mom, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Margot has the cutest new kitty, you guys. So cute.
Go to Instagram, but at Brooklyn Fit Chick, you can see all the pictures for yourself.
We were just saying before we got on the air, we are so excited to talk about this. You know what I'm kicking myself though, Margot, is that I wish we had done this as a holiday movie.
Well,
Because
there
it's a
are other
holiday. It's
I
a
know.
bit of a holiday. Because we're on this weird little like daisy chain of 6 degrees of Lillian Hellman kind of thing that we're doing.
Exactly.
But today we're going to be talking about The Thin Man. But in case you're new, yes, this is a podcast where we talk about films that have been adapted usually from books. But when the pandemic started, we decided to do a brand new episode every single week. And that means that we are looking for really any literary source, anything that's been adapted into a movie, we will consider. So if you've got suggestions for movie adaptations that you would like to hear us talk about, you can do that in a couple of different places on the internet. You can also meet other listeners of this podcast and interact with us.
We do have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it, but we're much more interactive in our Facebook group and people offer suggestions there. And we always say the source needs to be something we can easily get our hands on or pretty easily get our hands on. And the movie needs to be streaming on a major app. But that's where a Book vs. Movie podcast group asked to join, and it's a private group, and we really do just talk about books and movies there. It's pretty great. We're on Twitter and Instagram, and at those places, you type out Book versus a Movie. Please follow us in those places if you use that social media. And we have an old-timey email, Book versus Movie podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. And we do have stickers if you would like some stickers.
And if you really enjoy the show and like to help keep us in books and movies, you can even support us on Patreon.
We really appreciate those of you that support us on Patreon. Margot and I have been doing the show for over 9 years now. So we have about all the shows from 2021 and previous to that are starting to go up onto the Patreon wall, Patreon. Recently, we put up there Blue Crush, Steel Magnolias, A Room with a View, and Top Gun. Top Gun was based on a magazine article, just so you know. We just really appreciate those of you that support us there, and we are filled out for the next few months. We have Harold and Maude coming up, Enola Holmes, The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, really fun ones coming up on Patreon. So thank you all so much for doing that.
So, okay, let me see if I'm trying to follow the progression of the things that we did. So last week we did The Best Years of Our Lives, which was adapted from a novel in verse. And that was directed by William Wyler, who also directed Little Foxes, which we did the week before.
Right.
Which was written by Lillian Hellman, who was married to Dashiell Hammett, who is our author today.
Yes.
Did it.
That all works out. Almost as if we planned it out that way.
Now, as Margos said, we've been doing this for 9 years. And so sometimes even we forget what we've done and what we haven't done. We did the Maltese Falcon, didn't we?
Absolutely, we did. Yes.
Okay. I thought we did. I thought we had. I am a big fan of Dashiell Hammett. We will talk about him in just a second. But I didn't realize that this was, I don't know that I've ever read The Thin Man before. A couple of things. I've loved this movie since I was a kid. I always thought the dog's name was Astor.
Oh, no,
like,
it's Asta.
Like Lady Astor. And that was just their accent. But no, the dog's name is actually Asta. I was very surprised to see that in print. Like, oh, it's Asta. This is Dashiell Hammett's final novel. I didn't know that he didn't write any novels after this.
No, he did not. He had a really interesting life. He was born, and it's Samuel Dashiell Hammett or Dashiell. We've heard it pronounced two different ways. I think
that's correct. Lillian Hellman in that interview says that the correct pronunciation is actually Dashiell.
Dashiell.
Interesting.
We've always heard Dashiell. I mean, I don't know, Roger Ebert or anybody else that I've heard talking about movies throughout my life always said Dashiell Hammett. Mm-hmm. He was born May 27th, 1894 in St. Mary's County, Maryland. He was in Baltimore when he was growing up. He went to 1 year of high school and then dropped out. He just was kind of finding his way. He was super smart and was just one of those people looking for adventure. One of those places he started was the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. And that's where he learned.
It's like the most famous detective organization in human history, basically.
Absolutely. And this is at the early 20th century, from 1915 to 1922. He did take some time off. He did serve in World War I. He was serving overseas. He became afflicted with the Spanish flu. We've talked about that on the show many, many times when people were coming back and what the state of America was like. So he had a form of tuberculosis that actually stuck with him for the rest of his life. He was also a very, very heavy drinker, which doesn't help matters. He started writing detective stories. He's written The Maltese Falcon. He's had so many short stories. I mean, this is one of his only longer novels. But he's perhaps best known for, I mean, in addition to the great writing and bringing up these amazing characters, but was his political stances, which were always very leftist throughout his life. Even though he had served in World War I and II, he was a communist, but he actually was very much against the policies of Russia. Definitely somebody who just kind of marched to his own drummer. When he was brought in front of the House of Un-American Activities, he refused to name names. He refused to name people he was in organizations with. He actually went to jail in West Virginia at a federal penitentiary for a while. And then when he came back, he did some writing, and he was with Lillian Hellman for 30 plus years. They were partners. They never were married. And he died in 1961 at the age of 66. And then she inherited his work, and then she was so much in debt. We talked about this before, but that he owed so much money to the government that the government wanted to buy they wanted her to give them his materials, and they wanted her to spend $100,000 to do so. And she says, I've got maybe 10 grand I can scrape together. And they said, nope, you got, so she had somebody in her life buy it from her and then gave it back to her. And then so she's been in charge of his work ever since, which is why it still exists. It's still in print, and it's still, and it's he's sort of just like one of the godfathers of that pre-film noir, of the detective lifestyle. And what's fascinating about what we're talking about today is The Thin Man began as a Red Book magazine article in December of 1933, the same month and year that Prohibition ends. So
yes. So in the book, and the movie comes out the following year, 1934. So for movie audiences watching the film, like Prohibition has just been lifted. And but in the book, in the original story, they're never not drinking.
Right.
Basically. And it's a little unclear. Like there are references to going to a speakeasy. So-and-so was at the speakeasy. So obviously he wrote it before, just before the lift. The story takes place in December of 1933. In fact, it takes place really right after that happens. Mm-hmm. So we have Nick and Nora Charles, the famous couple. And, it opens with Nora is doing her last minute Christmas shopping. So we are squarely in December of 1933. But there's no mention of like, yay, Prohibition's over, which is kind of a big deal. You think they would, but so I think because he clearly had to write it ahead of publication, but nor is there any reference to hiding any drinking from the law. People are just drinking right, left, center, doesn't matter how old they are or what time of day it is or whether they're going to be driving or whatevs.
Yes, and the story is said also Dashiell Hammett spent some time in San Francisco, and there's a couple of spots where his apartment and where Sam Spade's supposedly the character that was Sam Spade, where he was based. I think it's on Polk Street in San Francisco. So this is a couple. I mean, we should say this. I mean, magazines used to be very thick. They were broadsheet sized and very heavy, and they were full with not only just fashion articles or whatever you were into, but lots of stories, lots of fiction, a lot of short stories. And the way the publication goes, when I was working in magazines, we were about 3 months out between when you started and when, right. So you didn't try to put anything in there before that. For this, I would assume 5-6 months at least, that they were like setting aside.
I would imagine, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for the artwork and the type, I mean, everything just took a long time. So it could have been like 32 when he started writing the story. So maybe that's why there's not as big of a reveal about how this is the end of Prohibition, but it is.
It is. I mean, the people who are reading it this has just happened and they're getting this magazine. But I don't know if perhaps in the original version that came out in the magazine, there was some, I don't know. Right. But if that was something that was changed when it was later published as a book. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting. So Nick and Nora Charles, we learn Nick is a former detective. He marries Norma, who comes from a well-to-do family. Her father has recently died, and they are set for life, basically. So he doesn't have to detective anymore. And they are based, we're led to believe they're based in San Francisco, but they're in New York City for the holidays. In the original, there was an original version of the story. The main character was not Nick Charles, but Guild, who is the police officer in our story. And it was the story took place in San Francisco with Guild as the detective. And it was kind of a similar plot line, but setting it, I mean, it's a coincidence, but it's a really awesome coincidence that he's setting it right at the end of like the first Christmas after Prohibition has ended. And we're in New York City. Things are hustling and bustling. It's between the wars. It's at the jazz age has been around for a while now. It's a really fun backdrop. Not that San Francisco wouldn't be, but it's something about it being New York City gives it a real lively energy, I think.
Also, there's just this idea, like since 1929, when the stock market crashed, people were looking for escapism when they went to the movies. So sometimes you would have, of course, something more real life, like a John Steinbeck novel brought to life. But there were also at this time musicals and romantic comedies that were just lush and just filled with jewels and gowns and dancing.
Just opulent.
Very opulent. And it was just a way for people to just kind of, you go to escape. That was a pure, you paid your, 5 cents, 10 cents, and you went. And so that's also where this is all taking place. But the original story, we have Nick and Nora, who they're so in love with each other, and they just trade quips all the time. And they're never mean to each other.
The dialogue is they're never mean to each other,
No.
or they tease each other, but it's such a fun, loving way. Dialogue in this book is, I mean, it's like the Maltese Falcon too,
Right.
He's just a great writer of dialogue, but it's so snappy. It's so clever. He does such a great job of portraying in the dialogue, giving you a real sense of who each character is. Like you really get the sense of Nora comes from this well-to-do background. She's obviously had a very privileged background, but she's also very streetwise and very smart and very savvy, and is a great help to Nick in this particular case. Nick, he's a little bit of a hardened detective. He was very glad to leave that rough life behind, but he wants to help people. And so he can't help but get pulled into this story. And then we have all the characters of the family involved in this story. And each one has a slightly different, and it's all revealed in the dialogue. Mm-hmm. The connivingness or the naivete or the greed, it's just fascinating how he manages to put all of that into what each character says without hitting you over the head with it.
Yeah. So it starts with Nick and Nora Charles. There's a man they meet with Dorothy Wynert, who's the daughter of a friend or somebody that Charles knows.
A former client
of
Charles. Yeah.
Right. And I'm sorry, I get really kind of mixed up with the details here. Is he the one that's an inventor?
Okay, so here's the deal. So he runs into this girl, Dorothy. She's like, "Don't you remember me?" Because the last time he saw her, she was a kid. She's like 20 at this point. She is the daughter of a former client of Nick Charles. Nick's client was he was an inventor, and Nick was helping him. We're told that there's not a book about this or anything, but Nick helped him when a former colleague accused the inventor of stealing his idea and profiting from it, and threatened to kill him. Basically built enough of a case that they just scared the guy off, but they never caught him. Is a very important detail. They never caught him, but they did scare him off, and as far as they were concerned, it was solved. But he got close to the family in that time. In fact, we're led to believe he may have had an affair with the girl's mother.
Yeah, there's infidelity going on here. And we should also, when we get to the film, but this is before the Hays Code started too. So this is a delicious time for this story because they can really kind of bring these things to light. But she meets him and says, hey, I haven't seen my father. I have this new guy I'm going to get married to, and I'm a little worried about him. And then he recommends, look up his lawyer and find out what's going on. So
he's like, you want to track him down? The lawyer's going to know where he is. Here, what was his name? And he remembers his name. And the girl's like, great, thanks. And she goes off to find the lawyer. Right.
And it turns out that you wonder, her fiance wonders why her parents broke up, and it's because he's a philanderer, I guess. She said he had a secretary. So he gets remarried. He has a new girlfriend. I guess.
No, I know it gets a little confusing to keep track of that. There's a lot of, like Margos says, there's a lot of bed hopping.
Yes.
And married and divorced and so on. So, okay. The inventor's wife files for divorce because the inventor is having an affair with his secretary, whose name is Julia.
Right.
So they are divorced. That's why the girl hasn't seen her father for a while. So, the inventor and Julia, the secretary, are not married, but they live together. And the mom who divorced him, whose name is Mimi.
Right.
Mimi we're told, has remarried this gigolo. Everybody's like, this guy, he's such a money-grubbing jerk, so slimy. His name is Chris Jorgensen. So she's now Mrs. Jorgensen. She's no longer Mrs. Wynert. She's Mrs. Jorgensen. Pretty soon we figure out that nobody has seen hide nor hair of this inventor for about 3 months. Nobody knows where he is. He's only communicating with the lawyer and some of the members of the family through these letters. These letters come and a letter saying to the lawyer, like, give my ex-wife X amount of money for my kids and make sure you take care of such and such, and kind of like what you would expect, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's all very suspicious. And then all of a sudden, Julia, the girlfriend secretary, turns up dead. Evidence at the crime scene that leads the family to believe that the inventor, Wynert, is the one who killed her. And we also establish that the inventor is kind of a weirdo.
He's eccentric. Yeah.
Yeah. He's eccentric, but he also he will fire people on a whim. He's,
and then forget that he did it.
Yeah. He's a little strange. He's a bit of a hothead, and he's also absent-minded.
And then who has the money? So he gave the ex-wife $50,000, or he gave the girlfriend $50,000?
He has given, let me think. I think it's the wife. I think he has given his ex-wife some bonds or something like that. The girlfriend is also helping She's also helping running his business. So, because she's the secretary. And so she knows where the money is and all of that. So she knows things, and now she's dead. And it looks like the inventor / father has killed her. And so Nick, who has worked with this family before and knows the lawyer, Nick and the lawyer start working on the case of who could have killed the girlfriend if it wasn't the inventor, because the daughter is convinced it wasn't her father, although it really looks like it was.
Right.
The Nick and the lawyer, Macaulay, his name is Macaulay. Nick and the lawyer said and they looped the police in, and they're trying to track down the inventor. Where is the inventor? He keeps sending these letters. We're sending secret messages back and forth. This is not unusual for him again, but it is weird. And then there's this other fellow who contacts Nick and says, hey, I've got some info on what happened. I think he says he was there.
Mm-hmm.
And before Nick can talk to him, the guy's killed. And he's killed with the same gun. The police figure out the same gun that killed Julia, the secretary. So now we think that the inventor has killed 2 people. And then at some point, it gets very convoluted with all these letters going back and forth.
Right.
The inventor supposedly sends a letter saying that he's in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He's been sending letters from Pennsylvania. He says he's in Allentown and he's going to commit suicide because he can't live with what he's done. And so the police rush out to Allentown and they search all over, and they find a guy who's where the letters have been coming from, but it's not the inventor. And there was no suicide attempt of any kind. And they're just chasing their tails, basically. Mm-hmm. For most of the book, they're just going round and round, chasing their tails, having a lot of drinks.
A lot of drinks.
Dorothy starts to develop a relationship with this married friend of the Charleses, who keeps showing up at cocktail parties. And she starts to develop a relationship with this married guy named Quinn. Anyway, near the end of the book, it takes a while. Like I said, it's a lot of chasing our tails. We're chasing a lot of leads that go nowhere.
Right.
But they're fun. They're very, very fun. Like, we're meeting interesting characters, and we're going all over New York City. It's a very fun chase. Near the end of the book, Quinn, the police officer, who's very happy to work with Nick, he respects Nick very much, is happy that he's on the case. He turns up and he says to Nick and Nora, who's also being helpful, he says, listen, we decided to go check out the shop, the inventor's workshop, and see if we could find any leads there. What we found basically was a body. We found a newly cemented corner of the workshop. We dug it up. There was a skeleton in there that had been buried in lime to eat away basically all evidence of who it was. And we also found, conveniently, you wouldn't believe this, but we found clothes that identify the victim. And they're very large size clothes. And there's like a belt buckle with initials on it, and the initials point to some former colleague of the inventors or something like that. Oh, and one of the red herrings, we should say, is it comes out that the woman, Mr. Jorgensen, the woman's husband, the wife's the inventor's ex-wife's new husband, Chris Jorgensen, the gigolo, is in fact the guy who tried to kill the husband before. He's the former colleague. He's using a different name. He is that same guy who tried to kill the inventor. So now he's a suspect. This is that we chased for a long time. So now this so-called fat man turns up dead in the warehouse, and as soon as that happens. And Quinn is like, we got him, we've got the initials and we know who it is. And like, we can't believe this inventor is going around killing everybody. He's killed yet another person. And Nick's like, no. This has gone on long enough. You will find, I think, that is the inventor. That's our inventor. Someone has killed him and tried to make it look like, because the inventor, they go to great lengths to tell us, is a very, very thin man.
Right. He's the thin man, not
He's
Nick.
the thin man. Not Nick, no, which I always thought as a kid. I never got that connection. Anyway, so Nick quickly puts all the pieces together. The news happens with Mimi, the ex-wife, is sitting there, and the lawyer Macaulay, and he's like, okay, all right. So, and the wife says that she's like, well, I just saw the inventor this morning. I just saw my ex-husband this morning, and he's gonna, he's a maniac, da 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 da. And Nick's like, yeah, no, you didn't. No, but somebody told you to say that you saw him. And I think it's Macaulay. I think Macaulay's the one who's behind, and he puts all the pieces together. And yeah, so they arrest the lawyer. It was the lawyer all along.
Yeah.
The end. It's great. It's really fun. It's really the fun of it is the characters. It's all about the characters that make it so, so fun, that you are willing to put up with all of these red herrings and dead ends because you get to hang out with these characters.
It's the dialogue that's really great.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like the movie, the book will be really fun for you because a lot of it is directly lifted from that. It's a lot of their banter and the way he interacts with other people. And it's the New York settings and it's a little bit of San Francisco. And it's just a delightful package. And so I can see why immediately someone's like, we got to make this into a movie. This is perfect.
It's great. Yeah, of course. And it's it just lends itself to that. Like these characters are so they're unusual. You've got the gritty former detective. You've got the beautiful socialite. They're living this very lavish lifestyle, but then they get dragged into the gritty underworld again. It's cool. I really, really love it. And but as we've been saying, as you can hear, a lot of loose ends, a lot of red herrings, maybe too many red herrings for a movie. So we've got to kind of just as often happens, we repackage, we reshape a little bit. We lose this character, we lose this subplot, we add this other subplot, and so there's a little bit of shifting around that goes on in the story, but it's basically the same.
Yeah, essentially it is the same. And so it gets sold and it's going to be made into a film, and it's with William Powell and Myrna Loy. And the two writers on the screenplay are Albert Hackett and Francis Goodrich. And the director is W.S. Van Dyke. He is Woody Van Dyke. He directs a few of the Thin Men movies. He's known for being One Take Woody or something is what he's nicknamed. He apparently filmed like Clint Eastwood films super quickly. That's what you hear about Eastwood. It's you get a couple of takes and that's that. This guy was the same way. And there were times when the actor said, I thought we were just rehearsing. And he would be like, great.
What's funny is we were talking last week about, and Myrna Loy was in The Best Years of Our Lives, which we talked about last week, which is a much later film, but she's wonderful in both films. William Wyler, last week's director, was known for the opposite. He would go take after take after take after take. I gotta say, I don't think one's any better than the other. I think they're both super good.
Yeah, they have their you have your reasons for having it, because with especially with the Best Years of Our Lives, there's a lot of depth of perspective. Sometimes things are happening in the foreground, some things are happening in the background.
True. There's a lot of photography stuff going on.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with Kubrick. We talked about Stanley Kubrick before. He did the same thing about light and shadow and where things are placed. And there's multiple things happening. Where it's here, it's just more madcap. They're just kind of moving it along. So let's do this. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll play the trailer. offer, before we do that, a quick recommendation for a podcast called Bandcamp. And they reached out to us and they talked about us on their show. So I just wanted to give you all a chance. The podcast, it's by a duo, Jennifer and Dan, who are very funny people. And they read banned books out loud, chapter by chapter. And they're trying to figure out why things are banned. And you and I could have we talked about it for a whole month last year. We don't understand why any of these books are being banned, but they are reading To Kill a Mockingbird, and they're doing it chapter by chapter. And it's super, super fun. So you need to check them out. As they say, let's get banned together. And that's Bandcamp, Banned camp. Alrighty. This trailer, which is 3 minutes, and it's very delightful. I put a link in our show notes. William Powell is just so charming. Like, just from the second I see him, I'm like, oh, this is
Did you just
great.
love him the instant you see him? I know.
What happened if it isn't Philo Vance? I beg your pardon? Who said that? I haven't seen you since you solved the Kendall murder case. How are you? Well, for the love of... Nick Charles, what are you doing up there? Impersonating a book cover? Shh. I'm working on a case. Don't tell me you've gone back to detective work. I thought you had turned respectable. Didn't you get married? Oh, didn't I? Vance, I married a girl in a million. I heard it was a girl with a million. Well, same thing. I've become a California gentleman. I never heard of such a thing. What are you doing here in New York? Well, it seems that Clark Gable is making some personal appearances here, which interests my wife. And there's a very good bar at the Ritz, which is all right with me. So we popped into town to play. But would you believe it? Before you could say Metro Golden Mare, I stepped right into the middle of a baffling murder mystery, and they put me to work. Well, you poor fellow, you have my deepest sympathy. I can use it. Believe me, Vance, this case is a toughie. It all revolves about a tall, thin man. I was standing at the bar of the Ritz one day, reaching for an olive, when a very pretty girl suddenly popped up in front of me and said,
Hello there.
Hello. Another glass. How are you?
You know, we do know each other.
Certainly, we've known each other for years.
Aren't you Nick Charles?
Yes?
You don't remember me? I'm Dorothy Wynert.
How is your father?
Oh, that's what I came to ask you. He's disappeared. Chris, what are you going to do?
That's what I said I'd do.
Chris, you wouldn't do that. Nicky.
Automatically...
Nicky, put Asta in here with me tonight.
Oh, yeah?
That knife's missing. I'll look for it in your back.
It's about Julia Wolfe.
Did you kill her?
Gilbert!
Well, why not? You had a perfectly good motive.
How'd you like to have a couple of little murderers for your children?
And maybe I haven't been on a merry-go-round since that day. Are you, anywhere near a solution?
Between you and me, I think so. I got all the suspects together at a dinner party. And then I pulled a fast one. I told them,
And the murderer is right here in this room tonight. He's sitting here at this table. Are you sure that the murderer is one of that group?
not absolutely. But I know where to find out.
Where?
Right in there. Now, you watch me. I'm going to dissolve slowly into this book. If you'll stand by, I'll give you the answer.
This would become the first of what would be 6 versions of this movie. The thing
And just to be clear,
going on and on.
There's just the one book.
Yeah.
There's just the one book. And they are so delightful together. Like, I would just watch them go grocery shopping. But, Powell and Loy, I think they made like at least a dozen films together, right?
I think it was 14. They were in.
My word.
I mean, that's more than Hepburn and Tracy. That's more than a lot of movie pairings. They supposedly never had a romantic relationship. They always just kept it professional, and they just decided that whatever they have on screen is so great that they didn't want to ruin it, and they stayed like friends throughout their lives, which is and you could see it. I mean, here they're just
he famously was he married to Carol Lombard, and he was going to get married to Jean Harlow.
I know she was married 4 times
when she died. Yeah. He was married several times, but I believe once was to Carol Lombard. And I know that he was, if they were not engaged, they were definitely planning to get married with Jean Harlow when she died. But I think he, so I'm just saying, like, it's not like he didn't have a thing for glamorous women. He clearly did.
Well, Diana Lewis was his last wife, who was an actress. And I'm like,
she's also beautiful.
Gorgeous. And I see this movie, I'm like, I get it. I get it too. I think there's something about him, and This is true in like everything I've ever seen, even like Life with Father. Isn't that what it's called? Life with Father? Is that right? He has this thing about him, and I don't know if it's real or not. It might just be an impression that he's giving, but he always has this like a real respect for the women that he's acting with, that his character, whoever the character is that he's plays, is not patronizing, it really kind of talks to women as equals. Like even when, like in this film, for instance, of course, Nick and Nora Charles, as you can see, people just wanted more and more of Nick and Nora Charles because they're so wonderful to watch. More of it. Can we make that happen with AI or something?
I just love them. And, but when, like, for instance, when he's talking to, and we should say Maureen O'Sullivan plays Dorothy, the daughter.
It's an incredible.
Yeah, Mia Farrow's mom.
Mia Farrow's mother is in this movie. Also, Cesar Romero, who played the Joker in the early Batmans, is our Chris Jorgensen. So handsome.
He's wonderful. He's so slimy and handsome.
And then Skippy the dog was a dog in many, many movies in the 1930s who plays Asta.
He plays Asta.
All these great character actors.
Great dog actor.
Yeah. Great.
Anyway, but when Powell is talking or Nick Charles is talking to Dorothy, who is really to him a child, like he really thinks of her as a kid, and in the book you kind of get that a lot.
See, the important thing is the rhythm. You always have rhythm in your shaking. Now, in Manhattan, you shake to foxtrot time. A Bronx to two-step time. The dry martini, you always shake to waltz time.
Oh.
What is it?
Just a minute.
Now, mind you, there's a still more modern trend in, let me have, thank you. There's certain people that...
Hello there.
Hello. Another glass. How are you?
You know, we do know each other.
Well, of course we do. We've known each other for years.
Aren't you Nick Charles?
Yeah.
You don't remember me. I'm Dorothy Wynert.
Not that scrawny little bit of...
Yes.
Or how'd you ever remember me?
Oh, you used to fascinate me. Real, live detective. You used to tell me the most wonderful stories. Were they true?
Probably not.
Tommy, this is Nick Charles.
Hi, Tommy.
How do you do?
Let's have another glass.
He worked once on a case for my father.
Yeah, some nut wanted to kill him. How is your father?
Oh, that's what I came to ask you. He's disappeared.
Now, don't say that, darling. He's just away somewhere working.
Well, I can't find him. I've tried everything. I thought you might know.
I don't know anything. I've been in California for the last 4 years. So what about his lawyer? Used to be some bird by the name of
Macaulay?
Herbert Macaulay.
Well, I tried him once.
Why don't you try him again?
Here's a nickel.
Even then, like, he really listens to what she has to say. Like, even though she's a little dramatic and a little, he still respects her and respects what she has to say. Or when he doesn't have respect, like for the mom, for Mimi, who's lying, it's not because she's a woman, it's because she's lying. I just something about Powell, like when Powell with women on screen, like I don't know. I love it. He just has this, there's just this respect that comes across that you don't always see.
Yeah, well, you don't always get as women. We know this for sure. So they show up in the movie. I mean, we meet Dorothy. She's bringing her fiance to meet her dad, the inventor. Her dad, the inventor. He's flaky. He fires somebody, and then he's upset because the guy's showing up like you're ready to leave. He's like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I thought you fired me." He goes, "No, no, no." And you get I think she has a brother too, and she says he's kooky. The father's asking about him.
Interestingly, in the book, we don't get a physical description of Wynert, the inventor, until a good portion through, at least a third of the way through before we even hear what he looks like. Mm-hmm. But the movie, we see him right away. We see this guy right away. And we get a little bit about like Margos says, like how like weird he is. He's very focused on his work. And his daughter shows up and in the movie, and this is not in the book at all, in the movie, she's engaged to be married. Mm-hmm. So she turns up at the beginning of the film and invites her father to the wedding. And he's like, "Oh, are you sure your mom, since the divorce," we get some exposition here. "Since the divorce, things have been and she's married to that new slimy guy now." And she's like, "Oh, you never mind that. And you just make sure you come to the wedding anyway." And so we're led to believe like, oh, okay, so he's kind of a weirdo, but he's a little eccentric, but he really loves his daughter. Yeah. But later, the inventor goes to see Julia, his live-in girlfriend, the secretary. And there's a man there. There's a gangster there that she's clearly involved with. And then he's basically like, "I'm going to kill you if I catch you like this." Then we see like this darker side of that. Mm-hmm. So we, the audience, it takes care of a lot of the exposition that's in the book of these like just people talking about the inventor. So then we, the audience, is planted us like, "Ooh, maybe he could have done this.
It's a possibility.
Maybe he's that eccentric that he could actually do something like this." We don't really know. So it's just a quick way of planting that seed in our minds. But anyway, at the beginning, we get this him in the workshop with the daughter inviting him, and then we meet the Charleses, and of course they're having a cocktail party because now it's 1934 and Prohibition is over.
Well, so
it may be 11 in the morning. We don't know.
Well, first we're at a club, and Nick, because Prohibition's over, people don't know how to make cocktails. So Nick has to show them how to make these Manhattan. And he's like, "And you do it while you're doing the foxtrot." And apparently that was a first take, and he thought they were just goofing around. He didn't realize, like, "Oh, no, you're going to be..."
It's so good.
But it's so just great. He's so funny. So then Dorothy comes over and he's like, "We know each other." "Of course we do. How are you?" He's completely charming. Then we get Nora Charles. So Nick is a retired detective. Nora is a socialite from San Francisco. She's super rich, looks beautiful. She's so gorgeous. Those clothes. She's
so beautiful. Her gowns.
They're just.
And then she's so smart.
Quick with him, and so she shows up. I've never seen this before, but she shows up and she does a pratfall with the Christmas gifts, and then immediately pops right back up.
Okay. Both of them. I think this is so. There's for as many films as they've been, it's so underrated. Like both of them are such gifted physical actors. It's just breathtaking. Both of them are so good at physical comedy. The timing is perfect. The execution is perfect. Like when there's a scene later on where he's been shot. There's like a scuffle and Nick gets shot. Not gravely, but he's got an injury he's recovering from. And he's on the sofa and he's shooting balloons with a pop gun.
Yes.
And he's like contorting his body this way and that. It is hilarious.
Scene. It's like this air pistol, whatever. It's not like a real bad gun, but he's just bored. So he's just shooting with it. And she's just sitting in her mink coat, just watching him. And then he shoots out the window and she rolls her eyes like, "Oh, for God's sakes, what are we going to do now?"
Well, I hope you're satisfied.
Huh? Where am I?
You're not in a shooting gallery.
Ah, but sugar, this is the nicest Christmas present I've ever had.
You act as though it were the only Christmas present you ever had.
Say, where'd you get that wristwatch?
It's a Christmas present.
Yeah, who gave it to you?
You did?
Well, you must admit I've got pretty good taste, haven't I?
You finished with this?
Yes, and I know as much about the murder as they do. Oh, I'm a hero. I was shot twice in the Tribune.
Well, I read where you were shot 5 times in the tabloids.
It's not true. He didn't come anywhere near my tabloids. Ah, bullseye.
Hello? Who is it? Oh, send him right up.
Who's that?
Mr. Macaulay. The Mallories. Oh, dear, I forgot all about them.
Say, aren't you hot in that?
Yes, I'm stifling. But it's so pretty. The Kirbys.
Is that another Christmas present?
Mm-hmm.
Did I give it to you?
Yes.
I'm spoiling you.
She likes that he has action going on in his life. Like, as soon as somebody gets murdered, she's like, "Ooh, honey, let's solve this murder together. We're in New York for a couple of weeks anyway. Like, what's the big deal?" And they get kind of caught up in this mystery of, like, they're trying to figure out who the Thin Man is and where he is. And it's some of the same beats. You know, they find the cemented over part of the shop, and then they pull out the clothes, and they're like, "This was definitely not him. These clothes are too huge to fit this man." They have there's a scene I really love where Nunzio or Nundi, there's a guy. He shows up. So Nick and Nora are, once again, there's also separate beds. This is when people filmed married couples with separate beds. But she's in a gorgeous outfit, a sleep outfit.
So pretty.
But she's like, "Oh, someone's knocking. It's 5 a.m. and they can't get to sleep." So he's like, "Try drinking. Let's try drinking." And she's like, "Nah, no, let's just." Then the doorbell rings, and this gangster comes in, and he's like, "Look, I didn't knock off this guy. You got to get the cops off of me." And I love this. Nick is just trying to, like, outwit him. And then Nora's sitting right behind him. And then the guy tries to shoot. Oh, no, the guy has associates come to the apartment. And Nick just says, "Well, this is your problem now. You brought this gun. Like, I don't know what to do." But he managed to distract him by hitting Nora. Now, we should know, like, it's not a real hit or anything. And then throws the pill at the guy. And he gets grazed by the bullet. But then the cops come in and take him out.
What in the name of...
Someone to see you, dear.
Well, that's good. I'm afraid I have to go to sleep.
Come on, get up out of that bed and let me straighten this up. You're worse than an infant.
Funny. I think those blankets must be a little cockeyed. Right, Esther?
There. You've got the funniest look on your face I ever saw in my life. Hurry up, go on out there. That man's waiting for you.
I gotta talk to you. I want you to tell me something. I want you to give it to me straight. Get me?
Hey, would you mind putting that gun away? My wife doesn't care, but I'm a very timid fellow.
You idiot. Ask her.
All right, shoot. What's on your mind?
You don't have to tell me you're tough. I heard about you. I'm Joe Morelli.
No, I never heard about you.
I didn't knock Julia off.
All right, you didn't.
I ain't seen her in about 3 months. We was all washed up.
Well, why tell me?
I wouldn't have any reason to hurt her. She was always on the up and up with me, but that dirty little Nunheim, he got sore with her because I clicked and he didn't. And he put the finger on me.
Well, this is all swell, brother, but you're peddling your fish in the wrong market. I've got nothing to do with this.
Now, listen, Studsy Burke says you used to be okay. That's why I'm here.
How is Studsy? I didn't know he was out of stir.
Oh, he's all right. He'd like to see you. But listen, what's the law doing to me? Did they think I did it, or was it just something else to pin on me?
If I knew, I'd tell you. I don't know anything about it. Ask the police.
That'd be very smart. That'd be about the smartest thing I ever did. Me, that a police captain's been in the hospital 3 weeks on account of we had an argument. The boys would like to have me come in and ask questions. They'd like it right down to the end of their blackjacks. Now, I comes to you on a level. Studsy says you're on the level. Why don't you be on the level?
I am on the level. If I knew anything, I'd be...
What's that?
I don't know. That makes this your party.
Open up, police!
Why, you two-timing?
Nora, stick him
me that bottle, will you?
What knocked her out?
I did. She was on the line of fire. Did somebody call a doctor, will you? Here, baby. Sweet. Help me up in the bed with her, will you? That's it.
Are you all right?
Baby.
You darn fool, you didn't have to knock me out. I knew you'd take him, but I wanted to see you do it.
There's a girl with hair on her chest.
Nicky!
Yeah?
Nicky, are you hurt?
No, he just grazed me, that's all.
You are. Somebody get a doctor.
Now, there's one call already.
Get into bed. Are you all right?
Sure, I can't even feel it.
I'll get some towels.
So he's mildly injured, but anyway, that was like, there's all these kinds of scenes like that where they're kind of like almost getting to a point. It ends up being that there's going to be a big dinner party, and the way they take this is that I should say, it's very confusing. There's like 3 blonde women, and I'm not sure who's the mother, who's the daughter, who's
Thank you. Yes, the blondes get very confusing. I'm so glad, because in the book, Dorothy, the daughter, is also blonde. I'm so glad they didn't make her also blonde. She's got kind of mousy hair, but yeah, the blondes get a little confusing. And so, and this is not in the book this way at all. As we said in the before in the other section, that he just happens to be sitting with Mimi, the ex-wife, and Macaulay, the lawyer, when the cop shows up and talks about the body that they found. In the movie, Nick is the one who discovers the body. Nick goes to the workshop. Actually, Asta is the one who discovers the body. He takes the dog and he goes to the workshop, and the dog is like going around and around this little plot of newly laid cement. And Nick realizes like, oh, something's up here. In the book, it's the police officer who discovers the body. But for the movie, which again is much more cinematic and is much more fun for us as an audience to look at, he invites all of the players to a dinner party. All of them show up, including the ex-wife and her gigolo husband and his other wife.
Yeah.
Because he's in the movie, he's not the guy. He's not the other fellow who tried to kill the inventor. He's just a gigolo. He's only a bigamist. So he's there with his 2 wives, and all the other players are there. The mobster is there. The former wife / partner of the whatever his name is, Nuncio, whatever his name. Anyway, the guy that got shot.
Right.
She's there. Everybody's there, all sitting at this very fancy table. And as they're being, it is very like sort of a Poirot kind of a thing. Like as they're being served this very fancy dinner, Nick is going over, he's monologuing, is going over his theory of what actually happened. Although he makes it clear to us in his asides to Nora that like he's just kind of winging it and he's hoping somebody's going to crack at the table because he only kind of has theories to go on. But turns out he was right. And yeah, it was the lawyer. but it's fun. I mean, it's done in a much more fun way than in the book. But because it's Powell and Loy, and why not take advantage of that?
And apparently Powell was like terrified of that scene because there was so much going on and there was so much dialogue to memorize.
It's a lot.
And move around. They have like drinks flowing and the food is being served and there's all these people in her. I mean, it was very, very stressful.
There's this whole thing. Yeah, it's so much going on in this scene. Mm-hmm. It's a lot. So not just his monologue that he has to deliver. His monologue has to be like woven in around all of the action. So you have all of these characters who have all kinds of drama, who are sitting at the table and they're interacting with each other at the table. And then also the quote unquote staff who are serving the dinner are Nick and Nora's buddies. They're drinking friends that we've seen at all of the cocktail parties up until now. And they're not really staff. They've been persuaded to help us also solve this case. So although they're dressed as staff, they're really menacing all of the guests into staying and preventing them from leaving the table. So it's so much action going on as Nick is putting the pieces together at this table. It's a lot, but it works out perfectly.
Right. And the lawyer tries to shoot him and Nick punches him out. Cops take him away. So Dorothy and her new husband, Tommy, are going to get married and they're going to take a train ride across America, which why don't we have more of this in America? I want to take a train ride so bad myself. And Nick and Nora, they're in their own little box car And Nora says, Asta, come and sleep with me tonight. And he goes, oh, no. And he throws the dog on the top bunk. And then you see the dog kind of cover its little eyes because it's...
The dog is so cute.
The dog is amazing. It's a Schnauzer, I think. And
yeah.
I just looked at this right now. 91 minutes. It's just like...
It's real fast. It's
super fast.
There's
roller
coaster.
A lot to go on here. And like I said, I mean, there's some movies that I lose the plot. I'm enjoying it so much that I don't care.
That's the thing and this is true of the book and the movie, that it does get a little, again, with the blondes and the mobsters and this and that, it does get a little confusing to follow the storyline, even though they've simplified it for the movie. But in both cases, you do not care because you are just having so much fun with these people.
Yeah, it looks great. It sounds great. It was a huge success for MGM. And so from there, they went on and made 36.
Why not? Why not just print money?
License to print money. I mean, they had Jimmy Stewart in the next one, which I was looking at all the other ones, and there's some where they have a baby, and it's all these. And I think, like, I guess over time they get sort of the diminishing returns. Like, just the original magic that you have from this is just unbelievable. They are the funniest people. I mean, it's such a beautiful film.
There's
smart.
There's murder and deception and revenge, like all kinds of like the most evil things in human nature going on all around them, but they have each other. And so they're going to be fine. They are not fazed by any of this. They just, they're solving this mystery and having fun with each other. And it's just delightful.
I put a clip of this on my TikTok, and it's the one where I love this so much when she's Myrna Loy and William Powell, when they're sitting down, she's like, how many drinks have you had? He said, I've had 6 martinis. She goes, well, I better catch up. She goes, I need 5 more and put them right. It's so delightful. It's just sort of like lightning in a bottle, I guess. Like, it's just so many different things happening in the world, and then this comes out and it's a huge success. There was a TV series I was looking on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember it very much. Who's in it?
Oh, I'm just blanking on the name. The one who's the Kennedy, that married to Kennedy, the British guy, charming.
Oh, Peter Lawford.
Thank you. And he's handsome and he's fun.
Yeah.
I always like him in things, and I forget the name. I'm sorry.
I could see how they would cast him as a Nick Charles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but I don't. I mean, I wonder, like, why hasn't Hollywood, anybody in the last 10 years tried to do this? But I think when you look at the original, I don't think like this needs to be updated. I'm just sort of like, this is so perfect on its own.
It's so great. It totally holds up. It's just terrific. It's, yeah. And I think it's really a testament to, again, the gift of Hammett's to put these kinds of characters together, build this kind of a world. All of his best dialogue is in the film. Like all of the famous lines of the film, all of the laugh lines, those are his. They're straight out of the book. Yeah, I really think Maureen O'Sullivan is great as the daughter. I think she's terrific.
She said it was a fun gig, but she wishes she had more to do. Because it's sort of like...
Yeah, but that's the character in the book. I mean, she has more in the movie to do than she does in the book.
Right.
In the book, she's just like, oh, I'm worried about my father. Oh, have you heard anything about my father? And, oh, my father isn't the killer, is he? I mean, that's all that she does in the book. She has much more, at least she has a relationship, and she's grappling with her relationship with her family. Like there's not that much of that in the book, and not as much as there is in the movie. So she has, but she's great. I mean, I think it's a really good performance.
It's one of the AFI's top movies for comedies and and it's at the American Film Institute. It's made it one of the top comedies in 2000 of their time. It's for good reason. It is lauded. They've tried. I've said people have talked about updating it, but it's just never really happened. It made when it first became available on VHS and then DVD, it sold like crazy. And they put them in packages, and then in Blu-ray, it's sold out like crazy. I mean, it's one of their MGM's most successful properties. And I just really loved it. And if it's between book and movie, and I really love Dashiell Hammett, and I've loved everything we've read, but I've got to say this movie is like...
I know. I have to give it to the movie, too. I think the movie, well, I mean, apart from the fact that it's just, of course, they're just wonderful, and you just want to watch them and watch them. But I think the movie does a really good job of condensing a lot of those loose ends without it, because if you had tried to do all of those in a movie setting, in a movie format, it would have become tiresome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it does a really good job of streamlining the plot, giving us just enough of the red herrings without, like, again, becoming just tedious. I think the choices that they made are really good in the adaptation were excellent. And yeah, all of it is just all the way around. It's such a solid production.
It's smart. It doesn't treat the audience like they're dumb. I mean, they really have a lot of respect for the audience. It's funny. It was nominated. It was nominated for a few Academy Awards, but it was the same year that It Happened One Night was swept everything, which is a great movie.
Which is a super good movie.
I can't be mad at it. I mean, but I don't think Myrna Loy I don't think she's ever been nominated for an Oscar. She got a special Oscar for like her life of work, which happens sometimes. But I think that's a shame because she is like, I know friends that are like Myrna Loy freaks, and I could totally get it now because she's a delight. But I'm sorry,
She
it's a
always
movie for
brings
me.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, same. I know it's a shame. I can't read that book without it being them. No, it's them. That's who they are. So what are we doing next?
Well, I was thinking about a couple of different things. There's film noir. There's the movie Laura with Gene Tierney and Dana Andrews. I haven't seen that in a long time.
Oh,
the book
me
is easily
either.
available.
Let's do that.
It's like 200 pages.
I always think we've done it, but I always get it confused with Rebecca because it's just a woman's
because it's the one name.
Yeah, let's do that. I love Laura.
I love Laura too, and I'm such a Gene Tierney freak. So
we talked about her when we talked about The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. She's spectacular.
There's a woman who wrote it, Vera Kaspar, and I love supporting. Yeah, it's like 220 pages. It's streaming everywhere.
Great, let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to do Laura next. And I'm super excited about that. Please, as we said, we mentioned at the top of the show, we're always looking for suggestions. So follow us on social media and give us your ideas. If you would like some stickers, you can send us an email, bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. That's also the best way to reach us if you have just questions for me or Margot or whatever. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Not Your Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick. That's my site, and that's me on social media, on Instagram. So if you want to see pictures of my new kitten, that's the best place to see it. I am on Twitter at Brooklyn Margot, and I am at Margot Donahue, MargoDonohue on TikTok, and I put clips there from the stuff that I'm working on, including all the movies that we watch. Okay, everyone, we'll be back soon with a new episode. We're just all black and white movies. I'm loving it.
Me too.
Hollywood, California, Monday, June 8th.
Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad and Podern Family. If you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, go to Patreon, and look for Book versus Movie Podcast. We have a basic Facebook page, but we also have a private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group if you want to join that. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Book vs. Movie. Spell all those words out. If you'd like to send us an email, it's Book vs. Movie Podcast, spell that all out, at gmail.com. You can follow Margot D at Brooklyn Fit Chick on social media, and Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thanks so much again for checking out our show, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.
And as producer tonight, we present the director who did The Thin Man.